Welcome to Atlas Learn English. Do you ever wonder what life was really like before phones, before cars, before everything became fast and modern? This episode is for beginner-level learners. If you are a beginner, listen to the full story first, without pausing, and let the images form in your mind. If you are intermediate, focus on how the past tense is used naturally throughout the entire story. For all levels, try to repeat some of the sentences out loud as you listen. Today you will hear a story about one day in the past. You will hear what someone did from morning until night. The story uses slow English, easy sentences, and the past tense. So relax, listen carefully, and imagine the day. The morning began early. The sun was rising slowly, and the first light touched the window. It was not the year 2025. It was the year 1900. There was no phone beside the bed. There was no alarm clock to ring. The person woke up only because the sunlight came through the thin curtains. The bed was small, and the blanket was heavy. It kept the person warm during the night, but the room was still very cold. Sitting up slowly, the back felt stiff from the hard mattress. The room was quiet. There was no sound of traffic, no sound of machines. Only the soft call of a bird outside the window. The face was washed with cold water. There was no bathroom, no sink, no hot shower. On a small wooden table, there was a bowl filled with water. Hands went inside. The water was icy, and it made the body shiver. The water splashed onto the face. It brought more awakeness, but also more cold. Then came the time to get dressed. There were no jeans or t-shirts. Those clothes did not exist in that world. A simple white shirt was pulled over the head and buttoned. Brown trousers were put on. They were made of thick fabric. On the feet, heavy boots were worn. The clothes were not new. They had small holes and old stitching, but they were strong. They kept the person safe during the day. The window opened. The air came in. It was fresh, but cold. The street outside was quiet. A horse passed by. The horse was pulling a wooden cart filled with vegetables. There were no buses. It was the start of a new day in the past. After getting dressed, the walk went into the kitchen. The kitchen was small. There was a wooden table in the center. There was no fridge. There was no electric light. The only light came from the window. On the table, there was bread, butter, and a jug of milk. The bread was hard and brown. It was baked the day before. The butter was soft, but a little salty. The milk was fresh. The family sat together. There were not enough plates for everyone. They shared. A piece of bread was cut. Butter was spread on it with a small knife. The butter melted slowly because the bread was still a little warm. A cup of milk was drunk. It was creamy and thick. It tasted different from the milk today. It was natural, without sugar. The father ate quietly. He had worked late the night before. The little sister chewed her bread slowly. She looked up and smiled. The room was simple, but the family was together, and that made it warm. After breakfast, it was time to leave the house. A coat was put on, because the air was cold. Goodbye was said to the family, and the walk outside began. The street was made of stones. The boots made a loud sound with every step. There was no bus to take. There was no car to drive. There were no buses. There were no cars. The only way was to walk. On the way, a woman was seen, sweeping the front step with a broom. A boy was carrying a bucket of water from the well. Two old men sat on a bench. They were talking slowly. The morning air was fresh. The smell of bread came from the bakery. The smell of horses came from the street. The walk took 30 minutes. The factory was at the edge of the town. When it was reached, many other workers were going inside. The factory was big. The walls were dark, with smoke. Inside, the machines were loud. They made a constant, heavy sound. The air was thick. It was difficult to breathe. The work was done with many other men. Some carried wood. Some worked with metal. Some pushed carts from one side to the other. Boxes were carried, and heavy pieces of wood were moved. It was hard work. The hands became red. The shirt became dirty with dust. The boss walked between the workers. He wore a hat and carried a stick. He did not speak much. He looked at everyone carefully. The work continued for hours without stopping. At midday, there was a short break. Sitting on the floor, bread and cheese were eaten from a pocket. Water was drunk from a small metal cup. Then it was time to stand up and work again. The hours were long. The back hurt, but the work continued because there was no choice. In the past, life was hard and work was necessary. When the bell rang, the work stopped. The day's work was finished. The factory was left behind. The clothes were dirty. The boots were heavy. The walk home was slow. The sun was lower in the sky. The air was cooler. On the street, children were playing with a ball made of cloth. They laughed and shouted. A group of women washed clothes in buckets of water. They rubbed the clothes hard and talked together. A man sold apples from a cart. People stood in line to buy some. The smell of food came from open windows. While walking, the sky was watched. It changed from blue to orange and then red. The colors were beautiful, but they also told that night was coming. When home was reached, the house looked warm. Smoke came from the chimney. The door opened, and the step inside was taken. Inside the house, the fire was burning in the fireplace. The room felt warm after the cold outside. The table was ready for dinner. Dinner was simple. Soup, bread, and some vegetables. The soup was hot. It smelled of onions and carrots. Bread was dipped into the soup and eaten slowly. The family sat around the table. They talked about the day. The father spoke about his work. The mother spoke about the house. There was laughter, sometimes, even when everyone was tired. After dinner, the family stayed together. There was no television. There was no radio. They talked. They told stories. The father told about his childhood. He used his hands to show how he played in the fields long ago. The little sister played with her doll. The brother cleaned his boots for the next day. The fire cracked in the fireplace. The candle gave light. The shadows moved slowly on the wall. Later, the house became quiet. The fire became small. The candle became short. Everyone became sleepy. The walk went to the bedroom. The bed was small, and the blanket was heavy. The blanket was pulled over the body, and warmth returned. Outside, the night was silent. There were no cars, no machines, only the sound of the wind. Eyes closed. Thoughts came about the day. It was not an easy life, but it was a real life. A day in the past. Lived with family, food, and simple work. And then sleep came. That was the story. A day in the past. It was not fast, and it was not modern. It was simple, hard, and quiet. Thank you for listening to this story. It is a good way to practice the past tense. You heard many past tense verbs in natural sentences. Now, here is your task. Record yourself for 1 minute. Describe your morning today using the past tense. Say what you did from the moment you woke up. Use simple sentences, just like this story. Do not worry about mistakes. Just speak. This is Atlas Learn English. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in yourself. Goodbye for now.